Yeah.
I could never adjust to
Just
the.
like that. Well, I know I have cataracts, but mine's not there yet.
Well, that's
You have to, but at night, driving is awful. If it's raining at
Oh, that's
night,
the worst.
I'm done. I've had to come back from Troy at night, with the rain. I'm just like, and especially on 85, they don't have those reflectors, that when they resurface road.
Right.
You can't
I just realized the bottom of your phone,
and
there's little
Right.
icons that down there that and I think that caused the break and the
increasing your prescription glasses,
That was
that's
fine. I
good.
took a lot
That
of
does
stuff
nothing.
off.
You see, they kept saying my cataracts
And
weren't
maybe
ready
the
yet,
memory was
but then I had
an
this
issue.
other thing happen in
Yeah.
I'm not
November, where I couldn't
technical,
see it all, and it's when I developed.
now I think it's the bottom. It's not even on the screen, but
Yeah.
right down near the
The
button.
doctor finally said, well, we can't decide how
So,
it is for me.
the way you hold
Get
it.
rid of the cataracts, so. But I'm not thinking, because he was thinking in 3 months, then I'd go to a cornea doctor and get it flattened out to the bump that's
Right.
there now. I don't see any need because I can see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
It's good now. As always.
Always.
Okay, I want y'all to get started with our activity.
Yeah, we're not
If
doing
you will
We're
get a,
bad students.
you are. If you will get a sticky notepad, and I have the Beatitudes posted around the room. And I want y'all to write kind of what you think it is and stick it to the Beatitude in question.
When you say what it is.
What it means.
Blessed are the peacemakers.
Oh, when you
Yeah,
said
who are the
something-
peacemakers? Who are the
Police
marshal police?
officers, that has to be it.
Yeah, that's it. Policemen.
So we take a whole,
Randy.
I don't
I
understand.
feel.
Just one sticky note per, you don't have to do it on every Beatitude.
I just
as
know
many
that
as you
it's
want
not as
to.
bad as it
Okay.
should
Give
be.
us an
So
example.
I just live with that.
Okay.
What's a beatitude?
We're gonna talk about that, Mike.
Are you gonna say something and we're gonna decide which that applies to, or?
We're gonna talk about what
Oh,
they
gotcha.
mean. So I wanna kinda get y'all's ideas
Linda.
before we get started. And
Give us
then
an
we'll see if
example.
we agree.
Yeah, give us an example of one. And we won't
Okay.
choose.
Blessed are the persecuted, okay? Are the persecuted people who can't put a nativity scene on their town square, or are the persecuted people who die because of their faith?
And we would put, okay, so let's say that I'm thinking about the persecuted. I could write.
On your little thing,
on your
who
thing,
that would be.
sticky, is it?
Our missionaries are persecuted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our blessed are the pure.
okay.
Our blessed
Yeah.
are the pure in heart. The people that.
Talking about who that is.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Kim. You explained that much better than I did.
Yeah. Blessed are you.
And there's some pins of it there.
I just said humble people. See, and then, that's all I can think of. I gotta start somewhere else.
Okay.
So who are the peacemakers, Melinda? Who are the merciful?
There's a shortage of those in American society.
Yes, I think we do.
Winchester.
Yeah, right, Winchester.
I don't know if I'm on the right track or not.
It's okay if you're not.
Blessed are the merciful. I put Gene Holland.
Y'all need another pen.
Yes. Thank you. I keep forgetting to put it in.
I'm somebody that's Sunday church.
I hope I don't get credit for my spelling.
No.
So our books on these, are they, where they at? Where's,
They live in Atlanta, in the perimeter,
Okay.
located in, which is
right through into Buckhead.
Okay.
And then the top place where you have to drive forever to get there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Find all the
Yeah.
traffic.
On the total other side of Atlanta.
Yeah.
I know, it's crazy. I mean, you know, like,
Atlanta's terrible.
it is.
I have a whole story about
Yeah.
having a wreck in
It really
Atlanta,
is.
which I'll tell you sometime, but my advice is don't.
Yeah, it is, it's awful. Yeah, my sister lives on the other side of it. Used to live like in, Sonoma, Peachtree City. That's so much easier to, because that's on the other side.
See,
Right. Easy to
I
get to.
keep suggesting to Lindsay and Brooks that they move to Peachtree City or,
Yeah, this Newnham would be a good place to live.
Yeah, that's a good.
It'd be kind of like Prattville, wouldn't it? Newnham's bigger than Prattville.
I mean, I love over there, Sonoma, and, or is that, how do you say that? Is it Sonoma? And Peachtree City and all that.
Mhm.
That's really pretty over there. I like that.
There's an awful lot of snow in it north.
We're talking about the peach
Oh,
tree.
Sonoma.
Peach trees are blooming. Ooh.
Yeah, I heard the cherry trees were blooming in,
I'm gonna tell you, my sinuses think that, I mean, there's.
I've heard more people
I think there's more
about
pollen
sinuses.
way down there than there is here.
Let you do that next time.
taking that child to the nursery was hard.
You gotta put a darn computer to get them in. You want me to spell you all that thing today?
And half the time it don't
It's
work.
a
Down there.
Terry, you're to get sticky notes and write who you think the people are named in the Beatitudes. Who are the persecuted, who are the pure in heart, who
What?
are the
Okay.
Pure and hard.
No, I don't do that.
he's one of Dave's students.
Yeah, he is.
No, I don't think anybody's got any ice yet.
Where's the bucket?
Up top.
Then the doctor's expected.
We're writing who we think these people are, the persecuted, the pure in heart, the
It's too early for school.
thirst hunger for righteousness.
I finished school a long
About
time
5
ago.
more minutes.
I don't wanna do it anymore.
I'm the filming. I'm the filming crew. Well, thank you so much.
This is really sarcastic. You're looking at it like you think I might be serious.
I hadn't processed it yet.
Well, this is just something I put up because I did appreciate last week y'all's discussion and how courteous you were to each other. Does anybody enjoy the Babylon Bee as much as I do?
I see it sometimes I agree and sometimes
I know, it's very thought-provoking, but this says a useful tactic in dialogue is to call people a Nazi because they will immediately agree with you if you do that instead of listening to what they have to say. I just thought it was funny. Well, let's get started because I know that we have people leaving for choir and I want to have plenty of time for us to talk about what we have to talk about. Let's see. Glenda, would you open us in prayer?
Yes, ma'am. Father, thank you so much for this morning and the fact that those who are here right now, Lord, that we've gathered together to study and to just to learn more about your word and your direction and guidance in our life. I pray for Melissa as she teaches us today. Give her insight and wisdom and just be able to recall the things that she's been working to share with us this week. In your son's name I pray, amen.
Last week, we talked about the application of the Sermon on the Mount to some worldly issues, how we face the world according to the Beatitudes. But this week, we're going to talk about the application of the Sermon on the Mount in a more personal sense, to some more personal issues. But would anybody be willing to share something that they changed or they did after our discussion last week? Well, I'll tell y'all one thing I did. You know, I talked to y'all about the young missionary couple who they're working with Syrian refugees in the Middle East, and I became part of their support team, and I'm going to be praying for them, and I'm part of a secret Facebook page where they talk about their ministry, and they've asked that we not share the things on Facebook that they send us, but I printed out a story that they had told about part of their ministry, and I will continue to do that because I need for the refugees to have a face, like one face, not pictures of hordes and hordes of people in terrible circumstances. I can't wrap my head around that. So I appreciated them talking about two particular refugees that they shared a meal with. So it was a very sweet story, and it's back there with some of the things. And I know a couple of y'all weren't here last week, and there's still a couple of cards left. That's the daughter and son-in-law of a friend of mine who is doing that. Okay, y'all all know that I'm a lawyer, right? And I actually hope that y'all think of me like that rather than like that. Because, you know, everybody loves to hate lawyers. And I enjoy a good lawyer joke just as much as anybody else does. And I'm going to tell y'all my favorite lawyer joke, okay? There was a wealthy man who was dying. And so he called in his pastor, his doctor, and his accountant. And he said, look, I got a lot of money, and I'm going to leave some of it to people, but, you know, I know they say you can't take it with you, but I'm going to take it with me. So there's an envelope for each of you on my dresser. Each envelope has $20,000 in it. And I want you to take it, and at my funeral, just tuck it in the casket with me. So they talked to him about it and kind of tried to talk him out of it. You know, he said, no, this is my dying wish. They said, okay. So the day after the funeral, they met together, the doctor, the lawyer, and the pastor. And they were talking about it, how they had kind of mixed feelings. And so finally the pastor said, well, you know, they say confession is good for the soul, and the church really needed a new water heater, and I took out $4,000 before I put it in. And the doctor said, you know, the hospital was in need of an x-ray machine, and I took out $10,000 before I put it in. And the lawyer said, I'm surprised at y'all. I mean, I cannot believe y'all did this. It was his dying wish. Me, I wouldn't do that. I put a check for the full amount into the casket. Well, that kind of goes back to ethics. Because we talk about the Beatitudes. It's real easy to look at them as a list of things to do. A list of what's right and what's wrong. So, what's the difference between an ethical code, a moral code, and a religious belief?
Tough question.
It is.
You can be ethical and moral and not be religious.
Yep.
Ethical. Give us the three categories again.
Ethical code, moral code, religious belief.
Well, lawyers are ethical.
Moral codes can be dictated. Ethical codes are a sense of right and wrong based upon your personal circumstances. And religious codes are inherent in terms of your particular religious beliefs.
Okay?
And hopefully your religious beliefs encompass the other two.
And hopefully so.
But
Hopefully
the
your religious belief is the basis or the foundation of the others, yeah.
Do ethical codes encompass these, or do moral codes encompass these two? They can, right?
They overlap, got to.
Yeah. A few years ago, the Alabama Bar Association redid the ethical rules. And in order to get lawyers to learn the new rules, they, for our continuing legal education, you got like double hours if you went to an ethical seminar. And my sister, who is not a lawyer, thought it was hilarious that lawyers had to be enticed into learning the new ethical rules. But, you know, on some level, we want the Beatitudes to be an ethical code or a moral code because that's easy. You know, I have a book that contains the ethical rules for lawyers, and I know a lot of other professions have them. I know social workers do. And so, if I had a question about something, and sometimes I did, I could look in that book and it would tell me what the rule was. And that's how we want to treat the Bible. And the Beatitudes is especially subject to that because it's a list. You know, and the list is kind of easy. But here's the deal. It's not. It's, the Sermon on the Mount is a description of the character of a Christian. It is not the new 10 Commandments. You know, we've had a lot of controversy in this state about the 10 Commandments. But, again, if you obeyed every one of the 10 Commandments, would that make you a Christian? No. If you obey every one of the Beatitudes, if you're every one of these things, it doesn't make you a Christian. When I worked for a nonprofit law firm, there were people there who were not Christians. And they would tell you they were not Christians. I mean, that was just not who they were. But they were good people. And they might very well have obeyed every one of these. They were compassionate. They cared about people. They helped people because it was the right thing to do. But they were not Christians.
And like Southern Poverty Law Center.
Exactly. Not where I worked, but very similar, yes. So this is more a description of how Christians act rather than rules for Christians to act. Does that make sense to y'all? Is that a valid way of saying that? Jesus didn't lay down a new code of legal regulations, but he communicated these ethical principles to his followers. So all kinds of interpretations of the Sermon on the Mount have been put forward by Christians. Some have seen it as a message calculated to produce the greatest amount of guilt in the fewest number of verses. Some people have said that. Because you look at it and you say, here's the standard, and boy, have I not gotten there. You know, I just have not been able to do that. So what we need to look at is the fact that Christianity is a relationship to Jesus. And of course we can't avoid some guilt because we never measure up to Jesus. I mean, that's what we're aiming for, but we don't. So today we are going to look at the Beatitudes because that is where the Sermon on the Mount starts, and it's just a really good way of looking at it. Hello, come in. And think about what the Beatitudes means to us as Christians. The righteousness that Jesus described in the Sermon on the Mount is an inner righteousness. It's, you know, like I said last week, we talked about what we do to the world. Well, Jesus was really a lot more concerned about who we were inside. So it manifests itself
outwardly. I mean, if you take these things to heart, obviously they will affect the way that you act. But the actions are not what he was aiming at. You know, we know that we all have a sin nature because of the fall, and that we are inherently evil in our hearts. In Jeremiah 17:9, it said, "The heart of man is more deceitful than all else and is desperately sick." Boy, that's kind of harsh. I mean, that makes me feel kind of bad about things. So, only a belief in the reality, the necessity of salvation can keep us from reading the Sermon on the Mount either with foolish optimism or hopeless despair. This is a very, very high standard that Jesus has set. So when we live out his standards, or we try to, or approximately live out his standards, we give evidence of God's grace. So let's look at how the Beatitudes direct us. Okay, the qualities that give a picture of the characters of the people of God who are part of his kingdom, who have his blessings, are seen in the Beatitudes. So Jesus doesn't tell people how to get here. He just says, here's the standard. Okay? So, let me think. I put these up in a weird order. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Okay? Who are the poor in spirit? Come in. Before we started, there were a few folks here, and I asked them to go around and put sticky notes on these to say who they thought these people were. So the answers that people said, the blessed are the poor in spirit are those who are not trusting Christ, those who are still searching for God's grace, having lost their purpose or not knowing it, or those with no hope. Does anybody want to add to any of that?
I guess I equate the word poor with humble.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
Don't you have to look at it from what would be someone that doesn't have a poor spirit?
Okay.
Who would that person be? And then, you know, whatever that makes that person have a joyous spirit, what would diminish that? So loss of a loved one, loss of God, a lot of it's earthly things that, you know, pull you away from joy.
Okay.
That's what
All right. I like that. Anybody else? Well, obviously the poor in spirit doesn't have anything to do with financial poverty. I mean, that's not what we're talking about. Some people see it as an acknowledgement of our need for God in all aspects of life. So it may be people who are Christians, who are walking with Christ, but they acknowledge that my spirit isn't enough. You know, I have to look to God. And we were talking about that earlier when we talked about Jason, that we have to trust God for everything in our lives because we have no control. It means to not be self-reliant, to not have a prideful spirit, but to recognize the poverty of our own spirit and that we totally depend on God. So what's the promise? For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. You know, if we depend on God, then we have everything. We have the kingdom of heaven. Okay? All right. Blessed are those who mourn. Not as many people had an opinion on this one.
Didn't see
Oh, it's hidden.
I've got it.
Okay, let's see. Those that grieve for physical or spiritual death, and when we know our loved one is with Jesus. Okay? Anybody else? People who mourn. Y'all are really quiet today. You were lively last week. Is it harder today? Well, there's more than one type of mourning. Would y'all agree with that? And more than one thing we mourn about. Okay, obviously, you know, the first thing that came to my mind, obviously, was death, mourning over someone in death. But are there other things that we mourn for?
Sometimes you mourn for, say for example, family members who are not believers, and you so desperately want them to come to know Jesus in a personal way.
Right.
And that weighs on your mind constantly. To me, that's a kind of another description of mourning. Makes you feel sad,
Yes.
hopeless, because you personally can't do anything about it. It's their choice, it's their decision, so.
Right.
The news media attempts every day to give you things to mourn about.
Yeah, it does. And that's one of the things that I found in some of my research is mourning over the condition of the world. And we do mourn over that.
You can also mourn for like lost relationships or relationships that aren't right,
Right,
earthly relationships.
exactly.
Other people.
Have you ever mourned for something you felt you should have done as a Christian and you didn't do as a Christian?
That's called guilt.
It's guilt.
Well, yeah, I guess that is kind of guilt. I have talked to y'all many times about my friend Martha Myers, who was a Christian missionary, an IMB missionary from Alabama, who was martyred. And when I heard that she had been killed, the first thing I thought about was, I went to bed last night without praying for her. That was my first thought. Now, God had a perfect plan, and I know that. But that was part of my mourning process for Martha, was that I had not supported her in prayer as I wished I had. And it was guilt, you're right. Okay, well, let's talk about blessed are the meek. Okay, humble, needs not met, put others before themselves. Does anybody in here think they're meek?
I think of that with a lot of people when I think about the class, yes.
You know, I think so many of these, we put the world's definition on it rather than what Jesus was defining it to be.
It's meek, not weak.
Yeah,
I
and
think the world thinks of it as weak.
weak,
Right.
sure.
That's right. There was a story about a saint, Saint Ignatius, and he was, one of the early saints, and it was just, when there was a lot of persecution of the church, but he was very prominent in the church. He wrote against a lot of the early heresies. And the emperor decided that he would be killed. And so he sent some soldiers to get him. And he was in Antioch. He was a long way from Rome. So they came and they got him and they said, we're taking you back to Rome and you're going to be executed. So the church was large enough and had enough powerful people that they wanted to save him because he was a great Christian leader. So it took, because of travel at that time, it took weeks, perhaps months for him to get to Rome. And all along the way, they let him stop and stay with some other Christians. I mean, it was, by today's standards, it sounds a little bizarre, but things were very different back then. So he started getting all this feedback from these Christians saying, look, I got friends in the Senate. I can help you. I'm going to save you. And he wrote 7 letters to Christians at that time about different issues. But one of the issues he wrote about was, don't save me. I don't want you to save me. He said, I fear your kindness, which may harm me. You may be able to achieve what you plan, but if you pay no heed to my request, it will be very difficult for me to attain unto God. His witness was going to be that he would die for his faith. And he did. Now, I don't really think I could have done that. But would you think of him as meek? Putting the needs of his faith, the importance of his faith, ahead of his own needs?
Sounds pretty strong.
Yeah. He's not weak, but is he meek?
Well, there's a lot that we don't know. It still just kind of blows me away that one of the primary leaders of the church in China asked Christians around the world not to pray that the persecution stops. Because the church is growing because of persecution. And I mean, that just goes against everything that we perceive and want to do. And
But where is the church declining? In the West.
Right here,
That's right.
in the Bible Belt.
Where's the church growing? Where's persecution? You know, one of the worst things that ever happened to the church in history was when it became the official religion of the Roman Empire. So,
yeah.
the meek shall inherit the earth.
And we think that these meek and these terms that Jesus used then were that they're the way the world is today, but the world in Jesus' days, those were radical terms that he used. That the people were, I mean, they did not think in those ways, and so it was a shock to them, I'm sure, as he stood and preached.
The Pharisees, the religious leaders, hardly meek at all. That's right. And you get almost all these Beatitudes are